Hello and welcome. I'm Valerio Baselli and I'm joined today by William Davies. He's Chief Investment Officer EMEA at Columbia Threadneedle Investments. Good morning, William, and thanks for being here.
Good morning, Valerio.
So 2020 has been an incredibly challenging year, as we all know. Now the development of a COVID-19 vaccine shines a light on the near future. Nevertheless, challenges are far from over. Generally speaking, what should investors expect from next year and why?
Well, thanks, Valerio. I mean, for 2021, we all hope that it's a somewhat more predictable year than 2020 was, given the gyrations and the volatility we've seen over the past year. I think what we've got to be mindful of is that with the development of the vaccines, we ought to see continued recovery as we go into 2021 in terms of economies, and we hope for a return to normality as we go through the year, although it remains to be seen what normality is as we go through that year. But in terms of markets, we must not forget that after the weakness of the first quarter of 20 and the recovery since, markets are already factoring in a degree of recovery brought about by the vaccines and economic growth in 2021. So I would not expect to see returns in 2021 which are necessarily reflective of the sharp recovery we ought to see within economies, because some of that is already discounted both in equity markets and in credit spreads as well. So yes, we expect less volatility in 2021, always a dangerous thing to say, less volatility, but we expect less volatility in 2021 and recovery as we go through the year.
All right, and looking at specific equity markets, where do you see opportunities for next year and where do you see the biggest risks?
I guess if we look at equity markets around the world, we would look at actually a market like the UK has been an underperformer in 2020, partly because of Brexit, partly because of COVID-19, and the shape of the market itself. The UK market is not used to any good news. Any good news could help the UK market, and that could be one of the surprises in 2021. Outside that, I would also look at emerging markets. If we look at the devastation in terms of economies around the world earlier on this year, and the recovery we expect as we go through this year, I think emerging markets are well placed for that. We've already seen recovery within China, the largest emerging market around the world, but we continue to see recovery there, and we do believe that the outlook for emerging markets as we go through 2021 is likely to be pretty good. In terms of risks, Valerio, well, I guess the most obvious risk is that there's disappointment with regard to vaccines, whether or not it's their efficacy, which looks really good as from the evidence we see thus far, or, and this is maybe more likely, we don't see the take-up which is required in order to see the recovery taking hold, because we continue to see restrictions within economies. So the take-up of the vaccine is as important as the efficacy. And if we get disappointment there, then that could lead to further setbacks as we go through the year.
Okay, and finally, beyond the new political landscape in the US and the Brexit in Europe, do you see other themes that could play out in the markets? Maybe some new trend linked to the post-COVID world we'll be living in, hopefully, in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very interesting, Valerio, because if we look at 2020, we've seen an acceleration in certain trends, be that digitalization, or e-commerce would be the most obvious one in that respect, social media. But those were trends which were already in train. I think some of the interesting things in 2021 could be the trends which we saw in 2016, 17, 18, 19, but which have reversed in 2020 as a result of coronavirus. If we look at, say, the short haul market and experiences in terms of, for instance, short haul market to Europe, if we look at it from a UK basis, weekend breaks and things like that just have not occurred during this year. And I think people will be desperate to revisit that, but it won't happen overnight. It's going to be once that confidence returns. But those experiences, leisure, entertainment, which have been devastated in 2020, for those companies which are exposed to that and have strong balance sheets and can get through the other side, we see enormous opportunity in those particular areas. So that's not citing a particular region, it's citing a type of company which will benefit most from this recovery, which we expect as we go through 2021.
Thanks a lot, William.
My pleasure. Thank you.
For Morningstar, Valerio Baselli. Thanks for watching.